Welcome to this next lesson where we are going to take it up a notch. So, in the previous lesson, we had a look at understanding that AI is not just about copying and pasting, and we've seen how drastic the changes can be if you give the model examples of how you want things to be. And we could see the variant of the outputs, the generic one, and when we actually give it some references. So that actually sets a tone into coming into this next lesson, which is about what I call the AI workflow. Now, that just basically means how you get into a rhythm of doing some things repetitively if you want to get the same results. Now, having understood that, the goal of this specific lesson is to see how can we, based on what we've learned in the previous lesson, how can we then get the model to help us come up with a reusable master prompt that they can keep using in other things that we'll be looking down the line. So workflows are built by going through repetitive rounds and trying to capture, trying to refine, trying to iterate, approve, reject, reuse. And once you go through all that mill and drill, and then you get to a final result and then you save it, that means you have a reusable prompt. That's the goal of this. So that's what we call the AI workflow. So we are going to see how we can go through that in this lesson. So what we'll do is, I think we'll just probably just use a new chat. So in our ChatGPT free account again, what we want to do is that we want to see if we can interact with the model to understand from our examples how we do certain things. And then we wanted to ask us questions, and then we would answer those questions. That way it then gets its own chance to learn what we expect of it for specific scenarios. That's basically the goal. That's what we want to demo in this, right? So what we will do here is I have again some cheat sheet prompts that we're just going to copy and paste into. You have access to all of these and you can follow along if you have those sheets. And I'm just going to copy it and I'll paste it, and then we will analyze it for us before we hit send. So the prompt I have here is, I want the model to help me build a reusable master prompt for my everyday work. It could be so many things, but you remember we contextualize this as me being an operations coordinator at Brightspark, and I regularly need help with emails, meeting follow-ups, weekly reports, short summaries, and team style updates, right? And I'm letting it know that I am going to give you 2 to 3 reference documents that reflect the style, the structure, and the level of detail that I want. And I want it to do these things. I want it to analyze examples. I need it to identify what the recurring patterns are. And I need it to ask me up to about, say, 7 focused setup questions, how I like to set things up. And then we would draft the initial first version of a reusable master prompt that I can keep using for future source materials, right? And I also needed to make sure that it learns the way I write, the pattern, and it shouldn't just use specific facts. And I don't want it to copy the wording from the examples because I don't want to just be duplicating my own work and be using it for other days. I want it to be authentic. And I wanted to flag anything that looks inconsistent across examples. And then I needed to treat this prompt design task meticulously. We're just trying to create our prompt that we're going to be using for other things. So this is not, we're not actually doing anything here related to those things. We're just trying to create a prompt that we're going to just be using over and over. So I needed to tell me when it is ready and it understands what we are going to do. And then I'll give it the examples. So I'm just going to hit send and then see what it comes back with. So yeah, it says it's ready and it's asking me for the documents, and it's asking me you can paste emails, weekly reports, meeting follow-ups, teams updates, all of these as your examples. And then it will analyze the tone, structure, formatting, detail level, and communication patterns. and it would at least ask me up to 7 questions related to setup. So I need to be ready to be giving it all the answers. I asked for this. And then it would build me a reusable master prompt that we're going to design and be able to use for our day-to-day operational activities. So I have a lot of things. I do email replies, I do reports, I do so many things in this context. So I am going to go ahead and upload the documents. So we'll go back to our anonymized data again. So I will go back to the root documents, anonymized. So the files we're going to use would be all the reference examples. So if I go to reference and I go to these, right? I'm just going to open that. I think there's one more I'm just going to add, which is my meeting notes. So I'm just going to go to documents. Again, if you're following along, if you're having your computer with you and I know it's a bit awkward to be watching and be trying to follow along, but like you can pause in between and use the materials that you have access to and then just try to do the same thing and see if you get the same results. Or you can maybe adapt and use your own examples, right? So in this anonymized, what I want to use is meeting notes, for instance. Yeah. My leadership service review. We're just going to see how that looks like actually. The leadership service review. So anonymize, meeting notes. Yeah, let's have a look at this. Leadership service review, rough notes. So this is basically a rough notes of some of the things, backlogs, things that I just dot down that I know I need to pay attention to. Yeah. So go back to the chat. And I have 1, 2, 3 leadership. Yeah. So I have all the documents uploaded, and then these are the documents. So I will now give it a prompt in addition to the uploaded documents, and then I would add this prompt. So I'm not just uploading the documents and then just hitting send. I know that's what it asks, but then I'm adding some additional instructions, and I'm saying, okay, so these are the documents. Please analyze these references and tell me what these are. Then ask me a set of questions, right? So it's going to tell me what it thinks. Obviously, I have a way of writing my emails using a recurring tone that's always calm and operational, and I avoid dramatic language. I don't initiate blame in my tone of language, and I always use a recurring structure whereby I'll have a very short context summary first, and then I'll add some information and I'll group them into specific topics, and I use a lot of bullets in all my reference examples, and how this is how action items are communicated, and a whole lot that I'm not really going to get into detail, but it's up to you to take your time to go through all this detail to validate that this is actually how you write your things. And then once you're happy with that, you just take a look at all these questions. So these are the set of questions that we ask it to ask us, so we validate. So it wants to know, what outputs do you use most often? Who are your main audiences? How formal should the default writing style be? Do you want the master prompt to automatically do any of these? Should the master prompt prioritize some of these tenets? And when details are missing, should I hallucinate? No, don't hallucinate. Ask me. Or use placeholders. Do you want one universal prompt master or modular system with nodes? Actually, that's quite interesting. Yeah, so we have to actually give it its answers. And I have my answers already drafted because this is the training. Ideally, you want to answer this according to your own specific case. And what I'm just going to copy, it's not going to be like for like answering the questions, but this is just something I just created to go ahead with the training. But let's assume these are the answers. it wouldn't be like for like, but let's say, let me see, this is one. Let's see if it actually has some of the things. Yeah, my audiences, yeah, it's mentioning my tone. Um, yeah, I want things, ask for a short clarifying question if it's minor, so it shouldn't hallucinate. So it's kind of like already, kind of, yeah, that's good. Good content. Anyway, but ideally, let's assume these are my answers. But ideally, you want to be putting these answers in yourself. You want to answer these questions truthfully. So even though I'm just pasting this because the training material, I'm just going to say the answers might not be correlated to your questions in order, but try to make sense of it. I'm just flagging it. Yeah. So so we have gone through a process of, going back and forth with the model to come up with a master prompt. Now, this master prompt is what we would be using to use as the foundation to embed into any task that we want to be doing. If it's to do with email follow ups, if it's to do with report writing, if it's to do with anything. So, this is our master prompt, right? The key information here is that this is the first draft. So ideally, you want to go through it meticulously to see, is this really how, you know, I want the prompt to be? Does it tick all the boxes? It's a lot. It's a lot. But for the models, it's actually just chicken change. They fly through this like within seconds. But it's up to you to make sure that it's always going to be detailed. It's a good start, and what I'll do is probably, you can see how very long it is. I don't want to be copying this master prompt very long, always copying and pasting, because I know it's going to be consuming a lot of tokens. So what I'll do is probably I'll come back to it to say, well, this is a good draft, but maybe we need to tone it down a bit. It's too long. So what I'll say is I'll just have another prompts that I have here that we can just copy and paste. So just about refining the model. And it doesn't make any sense to be always writing this very long master prompt and be copying and pasting, right? So what I'm going to do is that we will just get it to try and improve this because it's too long. Improve it so we can use it for other use cases. So it's not just a single master prompt for just one thing. We want it to be adaptable to other things. So it's a good start. I needed to improve it so it works across emails, summaries, reports, and all this. So you can see that it's me trying to be petty here. I'm trying to get it to do the extra work, do the heavy lifting, so that I would just be able to use the same prompt and use it across other tasks. Because at the end of the day, all I need is a master prompt, a source document, and then tell it what I want. And it's all going to be embedded in the master prompts. So it should remind me to review fact stones and privacy and all that when it gives me an improved version. So I'm just gonna send this. Okay. So it's improved it a bit and it's more detailed now. And it's actually included the tenets. So your job is to organize, and then the possible output types could be, it could be to do for internal emails, it could be for follow-ups, it could be action lists, and the writing style is the same, adapted, and these are how I want my format and preferences. And when drafting anything to do with updates, I needed to explain what happened. I needed to tell me what the current status is and all that. I think this is really, really handy. And it's also giving me a very short version So this is the long version and the short version. And then it's also giving me how I can adapt this and plug it into other specific use cases. If it's to do with tasks, to do with leadership summary, internal email, meeting follow-ups. So these are just now copy and pastable items, right? And I you would just maybe either use the long version or the short version, and then you would couple it with any of these tasks. So it's just a matter of copying this as a main prompt, and then you supplement with one of these. And then here are the notes. So then you attach the notes. Here are the rough notes. Here, whatever. And then if it's to do with an email, you just paste all that. And then it would help you do that. So then you're not going to be going back and forth with the model trying to fix something that you didn't like or whatever. It's never going to be guaranteed to be 100%, but yeah, it's a start. It's a starting point. And what I'll suggest now is maybe there's one tiny thing we can just do. And what we want to do is that I like the way it has given the shorter every day and then the longer version, and it has given how you can supplement it with task specific use cases. What we would ask it now is that finally, what you should do is that you need to tighten it and make it something that is easily repetitive. So I'm just gonna copy again from my chat. So now tighten the full version so it is strong but not bloated. Remove repetition. Keep the role. Task placeholder. Audience placeholder. And optional preferences. Keep all these and then return the final version in one clean copy and paste block. So I'm just gonna send that. Okay. So now we have a very compact master prompt. And this prompt is basically exactly me. So I am acting, I am an operation support assistant, and this is the task I'm doing. So the task would be maybe one of these internal email or whatever. So you just copy and paste that there, and the audience, you put the audience there based on what it understands to be the audience from what it learned. And the source material, so this is where you insert all your rough notes. This is where you put all that. So it means whenever I need to do anything about my repetitive tasks with AI, I just open a new chat. I'm just going to paste this whole prompt into that. And then in this parenthesis, I would adapt it to whatever I'm doing. So if it's to do with internal email, I'll put internal email there. Audience management. And then if there are any new writing style, any new things that I needed to be aware of, we would let it know here. And then the source materials, so all those meeting notes. If there are documents that you'll be attaching, you can just let it know that they have been attached to this prompt. And once I hit send, it's gonna actually do that for me. So yeah, so that's how the workflow is. Now that we've understood how, from an iterative perspective, we have been able to get the model to help us to come up with that kind of master prompt. What we want to do now is that you'd want to then use this in an example, as a task. You want to just use it as a something. You want to just use it to deliver something. You want to see how you want to test it. You want to see how that works. So what I'll do is let's see if we can try this. Let's see if we can try this. So I'm just gonna copy this, and I am just going to go to a new chat, and I am just going to paste this. And the task is, let's say, operation report for me. week 3. And let's say the audience is leadership, senior management team. Um, Optional references. I'm just gonna say none for now. Just use the guide in this prompt because it's already in there. And then the source material, I would say kindly find attached to this prompt, right? So that's how I am plugging this. That's how I'm going to be using this master prompt. So now we need to attach. So I'm just going to go to attach files. I'll go back to my documents and then I'll go to anonymize. Let's say I give it meeting notes. Let's say I give it some inbox thread. Yeah, let's say, no, let's say I give it this. And let's also give it, let's give it this shared service queue delay. So we just mix in just these two, and that should be enough just to validate if we can get anything. So we just want to see how the master prompt works. So it means if I have a repetitive task of creating the report, operational report every week, and this week's week 3 one, and I just use a master prompt, I just tell it what the task is, who the audience is, and then what the source material is, which are these documents. Ideally, I want to be also adding maybe the previous 2 weeks reports as well, or any other anything that has to do with something that I know it needs to be mentioned in this. So let's say meeting notes. Let me just add some other things. No, that's grand. So that's us testing this, and it has given me a report. That's a very detailed report. Yeah. So that's us just testing this. So this is me using the master prompt in action as a test. It's not really having all the proper information that I want, but that's just the 2 documents I had at hand to test a prompt. So obviously in the other lessons coming up, we have specific use cases that we would be using this master prompt to, create some of these things that are needed on a day-to-day basis. So I've seen a next lesson where we would actually now wrap this up in section 3 in terms of how you organize your master prompts. I'll see you in the next lesson.